So we have Jim Harold here today. That requires a very short intro to the show. Ready? Hello, welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show. I'm Chris Curran from Podcast Engineering School, where you can learn how to produce and engineer podcasts at a professional level. And that's it for the intro. How was that a good intro, Jim?
Excellent. That's the best intro I've ever gotten.
So Jim Harold, well, that was the intro to the show. Now I'm going to intro you. Jim Harold is a tremendous individual. He's a full-time podcaster, everybody. That means he podcasts. He has several shows, which I'm going to mention in a minute. And he makes his living from his podcasts. So that's awesome. You host Podlords. That's one of your show, Podlords, which
yes,
I was a guest on. So thank you for having me on that show. And a couple other shows you do. The Paranormal Podcast, which I just started listening to. How did I miss that one for so long?
You only missed it by 14 years.
Yeah. Oh man. And and so also Jim Harold's Campfire. So those are the shows. All the links will be in the description. But Jim Harold, you are a beast. You are a leader in podcasting. So welcome to the Podcast Engineering Show.
Hey, it's great to be here. And I got to tell you, over the last few years, I've really enjoyed listening to this show. And I've picked up a lot of tips, and it's been great. So thank you for what you do. And it's an honor to be here.
Yes. And Barry's here with us, of course. And Barry, of course, he's off mic. Barry, are you going to... I see you looking through notes and stuff. Are you going to just be distracted this whole interview with Jim Harold?
No way. You crazy?
I know. You're gonna pay attention, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a big Barry fan.
Really? All right. Well, then
Yes.
We'll have to give you a special clip, which I don't play very often. Barry, when you listen to Jim Harold's voice through the microphone we're going to talk about in this episode, what's your favorite part of the frequency range? By the way, when I'm talking to Barry, I literally look to a certain part of the room, even though he's not here. Is that so stupid?
No,
Anyway.
Hey, the theater of the mind.
I think it is. It's like I just pretend like he's here. But anyway, Barry, what do you think is the best part of the frequency range of Jim Harold's voice?
The bottom.
What was that?
The bottom.
I know. Oh, dude. All right. So, Jim,
Oh my.
Let's do the speed round. You know the drill. We're just quickly overview for us, very quickly, your whole signal chain. So, starting from your microphone to where it's plugged in, how it gets into your computer, what software you record on or hardware, and how you connect with guests, and then how what software you use to mix the episodes, and then ultimately to publish.
Well, basically, I'm talking into an RE27 Electro Voice. That's a new mic for me in the last couple of months. I've got my little mesh metal pop filter here that BSW sells for them, the Repop. Then I've got I'll even go to this extent. I've got a Heil boom arm, and I've got the shock mount, and I've got the little printed mic flag on here, so it looks super deluxe. And then I've got a Mogami cable. I bought expensive cables so I wouldn't have any leakage into my signal chain, right into the vaunted Rodecaster Pro. Everybody loves it. I know Dave Jackson always talks about the Heil PR40 and, the harp music. Now that's been supplanted by the Rodecaster Pro, which is everybody's favorite piece of gear now. And so I record multi-track. I take those tracks and pull them into Adobe Audition. I'll go through, and most of my shows are interview-based, so when I'm not talking, I'll silence my side, vice versa on the other end. I'll do some RX-7 stuff to it if I need to, and we could talk about this because I have a wide range of people who are on the shows, from podcasters like yourself for Podlords to my Campfire show, my most popular show. And that's just people maybe calling on the phone. Sometimes it might sound like they have tin cans strung up. So I got to work with that audio. And then I pump it all into Audition, of course, run some RX stuff against it, maybe pull it out and put it into RX if I need to. And you helped me out with something. We worked together. And currently I'm using the Sheps plugin. I forget the exact name of the Sheps VR plugin or something like that.
Yeah, the Sheps Omnichannel.
There you go, Omnichannel. And then also I'm using vocal rider, which I'm really enjoying. And then I output that and then I run it through Auphonic Leveler only. I don't use the other little check boxes on it. So that's kind of from soup to nuts what I do these days on my shows.
Sweet. Wow, that was a great speed round. And so real quick though, before, because I might forget to ask, when you level it in Auphonic, what format do you publish in? Like what resolution?
Oh, I'm mono 128 MP3. So I know that's a little overkill for mono, but I just like having it a little bit better. So at this point, we're going with 128 mono. I used to do 64 mono, but decided to bump it up a notch or two, just in case you could tell. Usually my shows are like 99.9% speech, so it's usually not an issue. So I've not really made that plunge to stereo, and I think for my show it's not necessary. If I were doing a show that was more narrative and sound effects, obviously at that point I'd go to stereo.
Right. Yeah. I have a couple clients whose shows are very popular, and it's even though they have intro music, which is obviously the music itself is in stereo, but yeah, we do publish their show in mono because it's just the music plays for like not that long, right? 5 seconds.
Exactly. So. Yeah, so that I made the decision to back to mono, so to speak.
Back to mono. All right, so you got the RE27, which is a new mic for you, and our good friend Ralph M. Rivera recently was considering the RE27 or an RE20. I don't know what he decided, but what mic were you using before that?
Well, I've gone through a litany of mics, but the one I've done most of my shows with were the Heil PR40, which I don't seem to recall that you're a huge fan of. And I thought it was fine. I mean, if you listen to Leo Laporte's voice, he sounds tremendous on it, but I ain't Leo Laporte, and I far from it. So after years of using the Heil PR40, I went to an RE20, and honestly, for me, and I believe you use an RE20, for me, it sounded muffled. Now, I don't know if that's my voice, if I wasn't EQing it right. And of course, Rode, maybe a month after I got rid of the mic, came up with a special preset for the RE20.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang it, I shouldn't have sold that. But I've tried this RE27 and I like it. It's got that, neodymium magnet. So I think that it comes in a little hotter into the Rodecaster Pro. And for me, it sounds a little crisper and a little brighter. So overall, I think I sound better on it.
Yeah, and when you sent me your files, and I actually created a custom profile for you in the Sheps Omnichannel, I thought the RE27 sounded great. I have heard it on other people, and it does sound a little too clear, almost harsh in the high frequencies. Like it has a lot of clarity. But again, this is just a truth that always applies. The mic is one thing. The person's voice is another thing, and it's all about the marriage of those two. It's not about either one on its own. It's how they both work together. So if your voice, it sounds like your voice works with an RE27 really well. So that's perfect.
And it's funny because I've noticed with these neodymium mics over the years, they've always been my favorite mics. When I was in my teenage years and stuff and I was singing, my favorite mics to sing in were these ND mics from Electro Voice. And then I remember I have a couple of them here. I forget what it's, 767 or something like that. Handheld mics I took out for some mobile interviews. I'm like, man, these sound great. So I don't know if it's something with that neodymium, which I don't even really understand what it is, pickup or what it is, but it just seems like those types of mics are suited to me.
Right. Yeah, I think it's the diaphragm that's made of that neodymium, whatever that is. Yeah, I think it's the diaphragm. And I also want to comment on, you mentioned that the Rodecaster Pro now has a setting for the RE20, but here's the thing. Like, you know what I said like a minute and a half ago about that it's a combination of a voice and a microphone. So whatever preset they have in the Rodecaster Pro, it's not going to work for everyone. So you're not missing out on that. I mean, presets are great starting points for things, but like it's not like, oh my God, there's a preset for the RE20. We all need to sell our souls and go use that. It's not like that. So
No, it's a great point.
Yep. And you got the repop, which I also have too, the repop pop filter. And mine, the screw actually sort of broke off, and I have like a twisty tie holding it together. And if you see on the live streams, like the Podcasters Lounge and stuff, or any videos I make, you'll see it's like a twisty tie holding my repop on there.
Well, the other thing about something like a repop that I really like, first of all, it helps with the popping peas, obviously. But the other thing it does is it protects your mic. I mean, I've seen pictures of mics where people, put their mouth right against the grill, and, after a year or two, it looks like disgusting rust and all this. And I have a Heil PR40 that I use for about 10 years. And it pretty much looks like it just came out of the box. Maybe you could use some dusting.
Right.
But the grill is protected. So not only are you rejecting some of those pops, and as we know, the idea is to get the best audio you can going in so you don't have to fix those things going out. So I think those pop filters are great to protect your mic. It's kind of like a side benefit.
Yeah, it's like a spit guard. I mean,
Exactly.
Every now and then you got to clean off this repop. And if you have like the foam windscreens, you should, every year or two at most, probably you should replace them, because it's going to catch a bunch of saliva. And by the way, before I turn on my computer, because I have the iMac Pro computer, before I turn it on and the screen is completely black, dude, it's like the surface of the moon with like spit marks. Dude, it's horrible. About every 3 months, I got to clean it off. It's disgusting.
Yeah. And the thing is that I'm probably more happy with my signal chain from beginning to recording than I've been, because I used to have like the DBX 286S and Mackie mixer and all good equipment, excellent equipment. But the problem was I could never gain stage it right. I have to be honest. I mean, I'm technical up to a point. I'm probably more technical than a lot of podcasters, but maybe a lot less technical than some of your great guests. I mean, I've heard people who have worked in recording studios for years, and it's just like, I'm not at that level. So the thing is that I almost felt like the gain staging is off. So to an extent, I love the Rodecaster because it dummy proofs it to some extent. You don't have to worry about that piece as much.
Right. All right. And you got the Heil boom arm, which I also have, but I like it. I mean, my boom arms now are like 7 years old or 6 years old. So, and now they have, I think Rode has a really good boom arm, and Blue, I think, makes a good boom arm that people say are a little bit better than this Heil boom arm. So I was actually thinking maybe at some point I might want to try one of those newer boom arms, but your Heil is working fine?
Oh, it's worked well for years. But I will say this, what I've thought about, as many of us, I know you do video and many podcasters are doing a lot of video these days. I'm doing more and more video, and I'm thinking about getting one of those lower profile boom arms that kind of come up.
Oh, yeah.
And the mic comes from up. So, you don't have this huge monstrosity in your face. You just have a mic. And I'm seriously considering that. And there's one, is it OG White, or maybe that's like some R&B artist or some company like that makes OB Smith. I don't know what it is. But anyway, there's one company that makes really high-end ones for radio stations. And I'm thinking about making that investment just to look better on camera.
Yeah, actually,
there's only so much you can do with me, Chris. I mean, I gotta do every trick I can because you put the camera on me and it automatically shatters.
Oh, jeez. Hey, so one of the an alumni of Podcast Engineering School, he just got that boom arm that you're talking about. He said it costs us like almost $300 or something.
Yeah.
But it stays low to the desk, and he said it's awesome. And I'm like, yeah. I think OG White or something White. I think that's the name.
Yeah, because there's I looked up, I think it was OB Smith or something, and it's like, saying, little green apples or something.
Here we go. OC White Company.
Yeah, there you go. OC White. Yeah.
OC White. There you go. Anyway, I'll probably have to, because of the video, it just helps. But even in general, it's nice to have the Heil is fine, but it's sometimes when I move it, it makes noise, and you kind of have to keep it oiled up in certain spots, and it's not meant to be one of those mics one of those boom arms that you constantly move around. Like if you watch Joe Rogan and those guys, like a lot of people, they move their boom arm every 4 seconds.
Yeah,
it's like,
I don't. I tend to move my head. I don't move the boom arm much. But there are people who work that way. And hey, he's Joe Rogan, so what can I say?
Yeah. I also do that too. I put my boom arm in one spot, and I put my mic in one spot on the boom arm, and I literally don't touch it or move it the whole episode. So
yeah, that's me basically. Yeah.
All right, so then you got a mic flag, which I've never actually had one, but that's good for video, right? Because people can see.
Oh, it's great, and it makes you look. I mean, it's kind of presumptuous, but my company is named Jim Harold Media, so it says it's got an old school. What's that RCA mic from the 50s? The one Elvis used, was it the 55 or whatever it is? It's got like my logo has a little picture of that, and then JHM. Like a radio station would have. So when you come on camera and somebody sees you, like, oh, he's super deluxe. But It's just cool. I love retro stuff. I worked in radio in sales for years. So I'm a big fan of radio and I love it. So kind of melding the technology with old school radio type stuff. I just dig it. That's mainly the reason I got it, is because I like it. And there's a company that makes these. I'll have to find what it is. They do a really nice job, and they'll do like one-offs.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool that you like old stuff. I mean, that's like part of the whole vibe of doing it, right? It's just fun to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just love gear. See, to me, this is the perfect job because I grew up loving broadcasting. Okay. And I was always interested in the paranormal legitimately. I used to watch In Search of with Leonard Nimoy every Sunday religiously, and kept that up through my adult years, that kind of interest in the paranormal. And then I was a little bit of a tech head and a little bit of a geek. So my gosh, podcasting like takes everything I love and it puts it together. It is such a cool job.
Right. Yeah. And I'm digging your show, and I really want to talk, maybe at the end of this episode, we could talk about paranormal stuff a little bit, because it's so cool. And it's like one of those subjects, like if anyone is really honest with themselves, there's something to it all. It's not just all fake nonsense. Like
that's right.
That's very clear.
And briefly, I'll just say, I don't believe in everything, but I believe there are strange things going on that we don't understand. It is real. What it is, I don't know. I have more questions now than when I started. I'm more confused about it all than I was when I started, but I'm fascinated by it, and I love to hear these theories and hear these real stories.
Exactly. And I think that's the proper attitude to have. That's my attitude as well. Like, I'm open to everything, and there's a lot going on we can't explain, and to just write it all off as, oh, you're wacko. Like that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's like if you had a kid and the kid started doing some sort of art, like drawing, painting paintings or recording music, and it just was something no one else had ever done. And you're just like, oh, that's just crap. It's, come on, just do what everyone else is doing. Like, really?
Well, especially when people are telling their personal stories. It's like, who am I to say that you didn't see a UFO or Bigfoot or whatever,
Right.
I mean, I wasn't there. And a lot of the people, most of the people I talked to seem to be very credible. And I've talked to everybody from doctors and lawyers and business people to, janitors. And they mostly seem to be very sincere. So who am I to say that they didn't experience anything? Right. Now, Chris, may I mention here, those mic flags we were talking about, the company I've used for that is Impact PBS at impactpbs.com, and they'll do one-offs. You have to contact them, but and I think they do them for radio stations and things, but they're great. So if somebody's looking for cool, this is like a wide one that those shock mounts on the RE20s and 27s have, the wide ones, but they'll also do them for the stick mics and everything. So if you're looking for a mic flag, that's a place I've had good success with.
That's cool. All right, cool. Impact PBS. All right, then you're also using some Mogami cables, which cables are a topic in podcast production that are highly debated, because some people are like, oh, just get the cables don't matter. Just get cheap cables. They're fine. And then you have people like you and I who are audio guys, and we're like, no, the cables actually do matter. And, if I'm going to be like you've been podcasting for 14 years, right?
Yeah.
So let's pretend you bought a Mogami cable back then. It served you for 14 years. So instead of paying $20 for a cable, maybe you paid $100. But it sounds way better. It sounds better. Let's put it that way. And you got so much mileage out of it. That's my attitude.
That's the way I feel. This is my job. So sometimes I do take it too far. I mean, within the course of probably, 18 months, I bought a Zoom L12, a Mix Pre 3, and a Rodecaster Pro. So that's a little excessive.
Awesome.
But the point is, this is my job, right? And to do my job correctly, I have to have proper tools. Now, part of it's just because I love gear, let's admit it. But the other part is I want to be the best I can be. That's why, I enlisted you and sought out your help and hired you to help me out some. Because the thing is I've been doing this 14 years, but I think I'm smart enough to know I have room to improve, whether that's audio, whether that's content. And I'm always saying, okay, how can I get a little bit better? Because in this day and age of podcasting, I'm competing not only against other people like me who are doing this in their home office. I'm competing against NPR. I'm competing against iHeartRadio. And I have to make sure that I can, that old Army phrase, be all that you can be. I've got to be the best version of Jim I can. So I'm always looking to get better.
Right. Yeah. And getting nice cables, it just helps a little. So,
yeah, well, the thing is that, Chris, think about this. Okay. I plug in a crappy cable, okay? And then I get a hum, right? And there's a lot of RF in here. I've got my computer on my desk. I've got my Mackie monitors. I've got video lights and a camera. It's all pre-set up. There's a ton of electronic interference in this room. And you know what it's like when you find a hum and you can't trace it down. How much time do you have to spend? So maybe 3-4 years ago, I'm like, the heck with this. I'm going to get the best cables, at least within reason, that I can get, so I don't have to deal with this anymore. And guess what? I've never had a hum problem since. So there you go.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually, because when I moved into where I am now in my basement and you set up my studio here, which was about four years ago, I had my big table, the round table, and I had a certain setup. And then since then, I've sort of morphed into just this one desk, and then I got the iMac Pro. So now I have a different desk, but I still have the other big round desk, and I still have my channel strip over there. It's like on another desk. And so like I'm actually trying to figure out how I can move that over to this desk and where to put it, so then I can run my cables can be shorter and all that, because, cable management is very important. Like, you just don't want to run cables too far. You don't want to run them near power cables. And so that's my next project. Figure out how to get my Portico 2 over here near me. All right. So then you got the Rodecaster Pro, which, all in all, you're liking that?
Yeah, I think it's a great unit. Now, I will say this. I used maybe 3-4 months ago, I took the Mix Pre 3 out and I did a live interview. And actually I went to a witchcraft museum and did an interview with a gentleman there. And I'm like, man, these mics sound great on these preamps. The Mix Pre 3 just has those, I forget the name, cashmere preamps. I don't know what that is, if that's just a marketing term, but they are awesome. What I would love to see, and I'm sure that it's already on the drawing board, is someday down the road, Rode comes out with like a Rodecaster Sterling or Rodecaster Gold or something like that has, higher end preamps and is more super deluxe. But boy, I'm loving this. I mean, the thing is that's nice, Chris, now I can just walk in here, turn on my computer, and I can be rocking and rolling within like 2 minutes. It's great. It's just boom, 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 There are a few little improvements. I would like to see the files transfer more quickly. It's kind of slow on file transfer. As I said, I'd love to have higher end preamps, but these are good. So yeah, I give it pretty much a solid A.
Cool. Yeah. And it does have some onboard audio processing, which I'm assuming you're not using too much of that, are you?
No, I don't use I sometimes I will use some of it. Sometimes I won't use other, but I don't use the compression on it. And I will use the noise gate sometimes. And sometimes I use the big bottom, but I try to stay away from a lot of that. So I do my EQing in post via that Sheps unit and so forth.
The bottom.
Yeah, the big bottom, Barry. Yes. All right, then you're using Adobe Audition. Oh wait, well let's get to the guests. So I know you said you connect with guests in different ways. So let's go through the different ways that you actually do connect with guests remotely. So phone calls is one. So how are you taking phone calls currently?
Well, I can do those a couple different ways. And this whole topic is like my pain point now. We talked about improvement. This is where I want to improve. Right now, I can use the Rodecaster's functionality, that TRRS line where you can plug in your smartphone. So I plug in my iPhone 10R.
Got it.
And I will call people. That's probably maybe 10% of my interviews. If I have to call somebody internationally, I will use Google Voice, although I think that it does sound better through the Rodecaster program as opposed to Google Voice. Then if somebody's calling in, right now there's 2 different configurations I'm using, and I'm thinking about a third. I'm using for like people like you, Chris, or other podcasters for my Podlords show. I pretty much use Squadcast for that. I think that's, a really solid program. Yeah, there's things that I would change and I would improve, but I think those guys are really, their heart's in the right place and they're doing a lot of great work. So I use that primarily these days, Squadcast, for higher end people who have high end equipment. And then I use Zoom for people who, don't. And that's probably the majority of what I use, and I'm not quite happy with that sound. It is not as good as the other solutions. On the other hand, if you're interviewing someone who doesn't have a lot of familiarity with podcasting and things, I find it's easier for them. Although it's not really easy, but it's easier for them, and they recognize it. I have put a permanent ban on Skype. I won't use Skype anymore for multiple reasons. And then, I'm testing. Just because it's so drop dead easy, I just did my first test last night with StreamYard, that video live streaming package. They now have it where you can just record on it.
Oh.
Now, I don't use their recording function, but what I do is I record in hardware on my side. And I did a session last night, and it came out very, very well, where a person was having with Zoom, and I switched them over to StreamYard, and they just logged right in, and it worked beautifully. Now, they don't have the onboard recording, so you lose that benefit of like a pseudo double-ender. But on the other hand, I have the Rodecaster here, so if they have a solid connection, it comes through clearly. And by the way, on Zoom, I do not use their recording function. I record in hardware over here. On Squadcast, what I will do is I will use my side of the conversation from the Rodecaster multitrack, and then assuming that it's good and everything worked properly, I'll pull in the Squadcast version of the guest. So you get kind of that pseudo double-ender effect. So how do I record my interviews? It depends. And that's really where 2020, I'd really like to streamline that and make it much easier. I'm even looking at Comrex has a hardware unit. It's called the Comrex Opal. And I think it runs like $1,700, something like that, which for me, I do this as my job. It would be worth it if it's the solution. And basically the idea is you just go to a web page and you click on it and it works. Now, I haven't tried it. If it actually works, that's the solution, because most people have a smartphone these days, and it's better than the mic that's on their laptop that's 4 feet away that sounds like a super echoey room. So that might be the solution I'm looking at 2020. Right now, they have it set up where there's some IT type things you have to do with domain names and stuff, but they're coming out with a solution, a service that would eliminate that. Once they come out with that, I'm pretty sure that I'm going to at least test it. So that's my big thing now, the search for the perfect remote interview tool. That's what I'm looking for now.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, you're using a lot of different things. And okay, so you said you use Google Voice sometimes. I'm curious, when you do use the Google Voice, do you you make the call in your computer and then your computer runs the audio back into the Rodecaster Pro?
Yes. And so I will have a separate track for me and a separate track for the guest. The guest. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's so many options with well, and so here's what you're trying to do. You're trying to accommodate your guests, which is great. You're being a good host. You're trying to accommodate them and their needs and their experience and all that. And I also feel that the tools that we have, that we use, because I use a lot of the same tools you do and some different ones as well. It's just, they're all pretty good, but they're not perfect, but it's what we have to deal with. And most days it's fine. But that one day that everything goes wrong, it's terrible. But I don't know. I think things go wrong everywhere, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's like you said. I mean, I heard you one time talking about this very problem, and you say you have a range of them for different situations. And I think, if you're doing this seriously, that's the best solution. Because, the funny thing that I've found, I've heard other podcasters say this, sometimes the bigger the guest, the less likely you're going to get them on a Squadcast or a Zoom or something. They're just going to want to use their phone. I interviewed for a TV podcast. I was doing classic TV podcast, which is still available, but I'm not actively producing on it. I got to interview Ed Asner, and he was awesome from the Mary Tyler Moore Show and so forth. Mr. Grant. Fantastic interview, sharp as a tack, but it was on a cell phone. And it's like, what am I going to say? Well, Mr. Asner, unless you will dial in on Squadcast at 44.100 hertz, I will not deign you to be appropriate for my show. No, you take the interview and make the best you can with it. So I always strive for high sound quality, but with my Campfire show, it's like Mildred in the middle of Idaho who saw a ghost.
Right.
She's not going to know how to use Squadcast or Zencast or Zoom, She's going to know how to make a phone call.
Right. So for your guests that do join by phone, I guess you get their phone number and then you call them?
Typically, yes. There have been a couple cases, vice versa, but for the most part, I call them.
Yeah, I always do that too, and the main reason is that if the phone call goes dead, like if the phone call gets cut, then I can call them back immediately. I don't have to wait for them to call me back.
Yeah, I get their phone number because I control it then, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here. Now, there's some cases like an Asner or something like this. And when you're dealing with high-end publicists, they do this all the time. They deal with radio stations, so it's very common. What's your phone number? Right. But when I'm dealing with people maybe a little less sophisticated or individuals who are on the Campfire show, I always get their phone number if I'm going to call them. It just makes it so much easier.
Right. Okay. So you record everything, and then you pretty much assemble your episodes in Adobe Audition, and that's where you do your mixing, right?
Yeah, and I love Adobe Audition. Now, I've even seen Mike Russell was putting on Twitter the other day where they're going to come out with something that supposedly automatically eliminates ums. I don't know how that works and how good it is, but I really do enjoy Adobe Audition. I'm probably like a lot of people. I feel like I use about 10% of the capability of the program. Right. I'd really like to know all of it, but I'm a big fan and I like it a lot, and I'm used to it at this point. So and I think you've said that with DAWs. It's like find whichever one works for you, whether it's Reaper or Pro Tools or whatever it is, and go with it.
Yeah, exactly. So you use Isotope RX7 and the Sheps Omni channel and the Vocal Rider. We'll talk about them in a second, but within Adobe Audition itself, do you use any of their built-in processing?
I was doing that for a while, but I've gotten away from that. Now what I do is the only thing I'll do is I'll go through the various tracks and use some of the RX plugins, or if something needs serious repair, I'll bring it into RX7 and do that. I got RX7 Advanced recently, and it's pretty cool. That's another tool where I really wish that I had 100% comprehension of everything it could do. But it's certainly a cool one as well. And I really, really like it a lot.
Right. Yeah, that's the position I'm in too. It's like I still use Reaper, and I think Adobe Audition is a very good program, but I don't need it. I have Isotope RX. I have all the FabFilter plugins. I have a bunch of Wave stuff. I have everything I need. And so for me to switch over, it's not... I don't need to. That's all. It's not anything against Adobe, but
And this isn't politically correct, but there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? I mean, you can do things different way and still get to a great result, or hopefully where I put my sound quality, and this is before and still now, it's not NPR quality, but it's better than a lot of, self-run podcasts. Because I'm amazed that some larger, like my hometown, Cleveland, I'll listen to podcasts that are produced like by the local newspaper, right. Or I hear some national chain, like there was one big sports one, I won't mention any names, one big sports company, huge, multi-million, and they'll have local podcasts, right? But they sound like somebody put a mic in the middle of the table and they're like, well, I think the Browns, they're not really not playing very well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, gosh, guys.
Glasses
common
clinking.
Sense. Yeah, common sense. So, but I'm not at that NPR level. I would love to get there, but I certainly want to be, I came from a radio background, so I want to sound at least as good or better than your local radio station.
Right. So with RX-7, that's cool that you got the advanced. And so what do you mostly do in there? Like, are you cleaning up your guests' tracks, like, de-clicks and de-hums and all that? Yeah,
I find that I'm using the breath control a lot, because I notice when I do commercials, I kind of pause, I go... So I've been using breath control a lot. Vocal denoisers, very good. I like their vocal de-reverb. All of those are really, really good plugins. And my thing is that I don't want to use anything that introduces problems. I'd rather have it be a little bit noisy or a little bit echoey than going too far in the other direction. Everybody knows noise reduction. If you overdo it, you sound like you're in a submarine. It's like, so the point is that I try to go light on that stuff. But the thing about RX-7 is you can do these things and it's pretty non-destructive to the quality of the audio. It doesn't seem to me, or at least I don't hear it, where it degrades the audio. They've really kind of got that. It seems like they've got that secret sauce.
Yeah, they're really good, and at the same time, if you use any of their modules in the extreme, you will hear.
Oh, sure.
The negative effects. Yeah.
Yeah, I never put it up to 11.
Yeah, turn 11. So that's cool. So yeah, RX is great, and then so then you got the Sheps Omnichannel, which actually. You hired me to create a custom profile for you. So by the way, everyone listening, if you own the Sheps Omnichannel, or if you want to buy it and you want me to actually process your voice and come up with the compressor settings and the EQ settings and the saturation and the gate and all that, that's something I offer. You could find on the website, podcastengineeringschool.com. But that Sheps Omnichannel is really good. It's a channel strip plugin. So it has pretty much every type of processor you would need in one plugin. It's very cool.
Yeah, I've really been pleased with the results, and thank you. And the thing is that, and this is Chris didn't pay me to say this, but in working with Chris on this, it made me think about other things and some other things I do in my process. So it's like got me to thinking more about my process of editing and mixing and so forth. So I think I'm avoiding some mistakes I was making before. And the thing is, I've been doing this 14 years, and people think, oh, don't you have it down by yet? Maybe I'm just a little bit slower than most. I don't know. But I always feel like there's room to improve. And that's, I think sometimes you got to step back and kind of strip it to the bare metal and say, okay, what could I improve in my process? And certainly that Sheps channel strip has helped in that regard. And then I'm also excited about Vocal Rider, because for me, that's another plugin, Vocal Rider by Waves. I deal with that a lot, because I have people on phone lines, I have people in different quality, and a lot of issues where they're talking really low and you can barely hear them. And the Vocal Rider seems to clean a lot of that up. So I'm excited about that. Now, I will say I've also gone to hiring some outside editors. And I actually, the one editor I hired, I said, hey, use this Vocal Rider for sure. This this is gonna help you. So, I'm feeling better and better about the sound on the shows.
Cool. Yeah, Vocal Rider's great. Very good. Okay, you mentioned you have Mackie monitors. What kind of studio monitors do you have?
They're just the little, I think, $99 studio monitors. I can't remember the, I don't know the
model.
The
okay.
serial number.
Okay.
Yeah, the model. But they're pretty good. I think they maybe color the sound a little bit. I think if I had it to do over, I might get some Yamahas or JBLs, but I can't really, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't justify spending more money.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm basically waiting for those to die so I can replace them. I believe it's the CR3s, the Mackie CR3s. I think the 3-inch woofer or something like that. So they're kind of small profile and go for like $110 on Amazon. So nothing really fancy.
Okay. And you're just using them when you need to hear something in the studio, you use them. Or are you like mixing with them? Do you mix with the headphones or with those monitors?
This is probably wrong, but I mix with the monitors. I don't know why. Maybe it's a claustrophobia or something, but I definitely prefer mixing with monitors. I think it's just personal preference.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, like mixing with monitors is the best way. Like if you ask any audio engineer on the planet who's going to mix something, they're not going to just say, oh yeah, I use headphones the whole time. Actually, these days, maybe some people do use headphones the whole time because if they're, just an independent mix engineer, like you have these websites online where it's like, hey, send me your tracks and I'll mix your song. And those guys, if it's like some kid in his basement and maybe he can't afford nice monitors, maybe he does get pretty good headphones and mix on that. But by and large, any engineer is going to say, yeah, you need to work off of monitors. You can hear things better that way. It just seems to be more accurate way to hear things. Now, that doesn't mean headphones are bad. It just means that I don't use headphones all the time. I use them a little bit just to reference my mix on a different medium, right? So
yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of headphones, I use the Sony MDR 7506, and I know people have been using those or some slight variation of those for years. I saw the first set of those I ever saw that were kind of like the MDR V6, I think was in the 80s when I was in college. So I like those. I've heard other people say they color the sound too much. A guy I follow on YouTube, Mike Delgadio,
Yes.
booth junkie. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he has like one of these voices. He could talk into a tin can and sound better than I do.
Yeah.
He'd be a great guy to have on. If you haven't, you may have had him on.
Yeah, he was on. Yep.
He's awesome. But he can talk in anything, but he doesn't like these Sony headphones because it says he sounds too good in them. It colors his voice. I just like the headphones, but everybody has a different taste.
Yeah, so that's the thing about headphones and speakers. Like if headphones or speakers are made for the consumer, then what the manufacturers do is like they boost the low end a little bit to make it sound bigger, and they boost the high end so it's like, ooh, nice smooth clarity. And that's fine for the end listener, but like when you're producing audio, you want to hear it flat. Like you don't want it to be accentuated anywhere, because then that's the only way you can actually know what the heck you're hearing. So that's the rationale.
Yep, that makes perfect sense because, and Mike even talks about the disco smile on the EQ, people love that, but it's not good for editing.
Right. All right, then you got you upload to Auphonic to use the leveler only. So
no, I misled you there. I use the desktop version.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
Because it's much faster processing, and you buy it one time and you're done. So
Yes.
I use the desktop version, and I just use, based partially on our conversations, these days I'm only using the leveler function.
Right.
And it's interesting, the interplay between Auphonic, which I think is a fantastic tool, but I was noticing in some of my shows I was very breathy. So I started using the RX-7 breath control, which reduced the breaths to begin with. So I'm not seeing that as much coming out of Auphonic.
Yeah, interesting. So when you level things in Auphonic, well, now they have actually expert controls or advanced controls where you can actually set the the dynamic range in LUFS if you enable the advanced controls. But if you're just using a regular leveler, then yeah, it'll, once it squashes down some of your audio, the breaths will, come up basically.
Right.
So, but that's good. You use a deep breath to get rid of that. And yeah, it's good to use the Auphonic Local app because, like you said, you buy it once, you use it for the rest of your life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, those guys do great stuff. And that's the cool thing about our space, right? There's so many people doing cool things. I mean, the Audition people are doing some interesting things. The Isotope people are certainly doing interesting things. Auphonic's doing interesting things. You have the equipment makers like Rode, and I just saw where Zoom came out with a new recorder. So it's exciting that you have all these different people, vying for business, but also starting to make this great gear and this great software. So I think it's just going to get... it's the basics are the same, but I think the equipment and the tools are going to get better and easier as time goes on.
Right. And do you ever use Auphonic to try to save some really horrendous sounding audio?
I haven't done it. I usually do it as a closing step. That's not. Now, what I was using it for a while, I do one show with my wife, Soulmate Stories, and what I'll do sometimes is I'll put it in there's another version of Auphonic, the Auphonic multi-track.
Right.
And what it does, it helps reduce some of that crosstalk you get. If person A is speaking and person's B mic is open, then person B mic is going to pick that up.
Right.
Yeah, that does a neat trick of getting rid of some of that. And I found out about that what's his name? Alan Tepper, the 48 kilohertz guy. He was talking about a phonic multi-track, and that is really cool if you have multiple people in a studio and you've got that problem of crosstalk between I don't know if I'm phrasing that right, but you know what I mean. The bleed, and it's a great way to kind of clean some of that up.
Yeah, I actually own Auphonic multi-track, so I bought it, and I run it on my local machine, and that's something I do. Like if a client sends me audio with, like, there was 4 people on a stage in Chicago, and if they can send me the 4 tracks, because actually usually when anyone records live, it's
mixed.
It's already mixed down, so you can't separate it, which is kind of annoying. So anyway, if I get the multi-track from that, if I get 4 tracks for the 4 individuals on stage, and if some of it sounds pretty rough, like a lot of background noise and bleed and stuff, the first thing I'll try is put it through Auphonic multi-track and just see, let's see how good it is. Let's see what it does. And sometimes it works really well. It always works pretty good, but sometimes it works well enough where I can actually use that audio and it saves me a lot of work, extra work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important for people, and I think that's where things like your engineering school comes in and educating yourself in general. Try to learn how to fix things, do it right the first time, or come up with processes that are within reason the same. So you're not trying to reinvent the wheel on every piece of audio. Of course, different pieces of audio will require different techniques, but to try to find some standardization and some processes like, okay, here's the situation, here's what I do. Of course, always referring back to your ear and how it actually sounds.
Right. Yeah, and just to quickly go back to the example I just cited where there's 4 people on a stage at a live conference recording. Now, if me as a podcast producer, if they send me 1 track with all the 4 voices on it, meaning it's already been mixed down, then that's another situation where I might put it through Auphonic because the leveler will level out the voices, and it'll also do the background noise reduction. Again, I'll just try it. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it overdoes it or whatever, but I'm sort of picky, right? I'm evaluating it at a higher level than most people, I think. But yeah, sometimes that works too. It's like, it's good to have tools, especially in the podcasting space, when some of the audio we get is just terrible. Sometimes you just got to try, like, let's see what happens if we do this,
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to have access to all those tools. I mean, I know, and that's part of the reason I tend to buy stuff is because a lot of the company, and I worked for, some big companies, and they would, I was digital sales manager for CBS Radio, okay, in the Cleveland market for 4 stations. And they handed me like a 7 or 8 year old laptop that was on its last legs. And they're like, go chop that forest. Here's a dull axe. And I determined with my business, and this is a business, is that if I need something within reason, I'm going to buy it because I need tools to do to do my job, period.
Right. All right. So then out of Auphonic, you have Auphonic generate your MP3 as a mono 128 kbps.
Actually, no, close. I have it generated as a wave, and then I pull the wave back into Audition, and then I generate it from there. Because I don't know what codec does Auphonic use, because I use Audition because I knew it was Fraunhofer, but I don't know what Auphonic is.
Oh,
so if it's lame or if it's Fraunhofer.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know why. I'm sort of thinking that they do use the Fraunhofer.
Oh, well, if they do, I could save a step.
Yeah, well, we could check on that. I mean,
yeah, that'd be good. We gotta find that. Excellent. Well, but right now, what I do is I basically output it as a wave, and I look at it in Audition real quick. And if everything looks good, if the waveform looks good, then I make it an MP3. Then I tag it in. Well, currently I'm running not Catalina, but the previous version.
Right.
So then I open it up and I tag it in iTunes with the ID3 tags. Now, I don't know if I haven't updated to Catalina because of its issues with multiple audio programs.
Yeah.
As of early November when we're recording this. But with the new system, I don't know if you're going to be able to tag your MP3s. Probably somebody listening knows the answer to that. But right now I tag them in add artwork and so forth. Then I upload it to Libsyn as my host, and we go from there.
Right. Yeah. So when you do upgrade, if you can't use iTunes anymore to tag them, you have to use something else. Like, I don't know if Audition would allow you to
I think
tag
Audition does it. I've just never done it that way. I always just did it in iTunes, figuring that Apple Podcasts is the number one consumption point of any podcast almost. So if I tag it in that, then I know it's going to be compliant and they're not going to have any issues. That's kind of the twisted logic behind that.
Makes sense. Yeah, lately I've been using Fission by Rogue Amoeba to tag my, and I'm actually publishing M4A files instead of MP3s.
I thought about making that switch, but I don't. It's like, well, what benefit am I really going to have?
Yeah.
Do you think that AAC sounds better? I mean, those sound better than MP3 in your opinion for a primarily vocal podcast?
Yeah, definitely. And I think many people think that. Like, that's kind of accepted that AAC it's a better way to compress audio, and it does it more efficiently and it does it with better sound. Now, we're splitting hairs, by the way. So there's not, like, if you were to put the same two files in front of someone, one is MP3, one is M4A, the average person won't be able to tell the difference. So we are splitting hairs. I want to be very clear. So there's no need for you or anyone to start publishing in M4A. It's not a need. And if you keep publishing in MP3, that's totally fine. It'll still sound good. No one will ever know. But it's just like, audio geeks like me that and for people, by the way, the other thing about M4As is that you can dial down the bit rate a lot and still maintain a lot of the quality. So, and here's why a lot of shows do that. Bigger shows do that because the bigger shows are paying for the download bandwidth.
Yep. So it's a cost cutter. Yeah.
They want to crunch their episodes down to the smallest possible file size they can. And M4A with the AAC codec does a way better job at low bit rates. It's way better at low bit rates.
So here's a question for you. Okay, let's say mono 128 in MP3. What would you encode that on an AAC, like 96 or something like that, or 64?
Yeah, you could. I mean, it's hard to compare them because it's just hard. I mean, you can listen, you can do tests and listen, but at that rate, that's a high enough rate where you're still retaining a lot of the, the quality of the WAV file, the original file. So it when you start to hear the difference is when you get down to like, let's say for mono, like the normal resolution for mono is 64 kbps. Now, when you go down to 32,
oh yeah,
you'll hear a difference. Now, if you go down to 24, you can go down to 24 mono, and it starts to sound terrible. So in the range that we're talking about, in the range that you're using and I'm using and we're all using, it's not a big deal difference.
It's interesting to talk about, though. I mean, that's what I love about this show. 99% of the population is like, just play the show. Just play the show. And we're like, well,
there's no activity,
I love it.
no giggle, no nothing.
So if you wanted to get I've got a question for Barry. If we wanted to get the best possible sound for a compressed file, whether it's an MP3 or AAC, what exactly would we need to do that?
You're going to need a couple of horses or a couple of mules.
You could tell I'm a listener.
Oh, perfect, dude. You're a pro. Wow. So, all right. Well, then, and then who do you host with, by the way?
Libsyn. And I've also used Blueberry for some stuff. And I got to say, there's great hosts out there. I mean, I've been talking to Mark Asquith over at Captivate. Obviously Todd Cochran over at Blueberry, and there's other ones that I've not mentioned here, Simplecast and Anchor. I mean, I think that's pretty cool that you can do a show for free. Personally, I like to pay for a service because I have heard people say, well, when the service is free, you're the product. But that's what some people say. But the thing is with Libsyn, they've been great to me. I run my premium program through them because that's a big way I earn money. I have premium episodes. Many people say you can't call those podcasts because they don't have an RSS feed. But nevertheless, they're audio shows that are not on the free side. And the thing is that they have just been tremendous. In fact, they just celebrated, as we record this, their 15th birthday. And I go back with them 14 years when two guys started it by the name of Dave. It was Dave, and it wasn't Dave Jackson. There were two other Daves that started Libsyn. I remember when those guys were taking the tickets, but they've just been great. I have not a bad word to say about them. I'd highly recommend them. I'd recommend Blueberry. Those are the two that I've had personal experience with. And I love some of the things that Mark Asquith is saying for Captivate. I think some of his thoughts about data and statistics and some of the things he had to say when he was on my show, Podlords, had some real merit. So, I think there's a lot of great hosts out there, and it's fantastic for us as podcasters to have choices. But I'm a big Libsyn fan. If you had to, bet your house on this. I mean, I don't think I've had an outage on Libsyn for, I would say, probably 10 years. In terms of my files not being available. I mean, it's amazing. They have to pump through an incredible amount of data every day to get that done, and they do a great job.
So you mentioned that you have the premium service with Libsyn. And by the way, you're on the Libsyn homepage. You knew that, right?
Yes, I did know that, but that was a total shocker. It was like Mike Moreau and me and Dan Carlin.
Everybody.
I'm like, dang, it's like those guys are way better than I am.
Well, anyway, that's awesome that you're on the front page. But you mentioned that you offer premium episodes via Libsyn, and you also mentioned that they're not technically podcasts. So describe that premium service and how you offer it and how people listen.
Well, I have my own app, Jim Harold Spooky Studio. And basically the way it works is that there are free episodes and there are paid episodes. Now, the free episodes you can listen to on that app, or you can listen anywhere that you listen to podcasts, any of the major players, Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, blah, blah, blah. Right. Now, what happens in my free shows for the Paranormal Podcast and Campfire, after 13 weeks, the episode moves into the paid archive. Okay. So at any given time, there's 13 episodes of those shows for free. The rest of them are behind the quote paywall. And then in addition, I do another 8 episodes a month that are only for Plus members. And they're basically podcasts, except they don't have an RSS feed. And if you want to listen to those, you have to basically go to my website at Jim Harold Plus. That's not my main website, but my Plus website, Jim Harold Plus, and log in. Or you can listen to those via the Spooky Studio app if you are a member. And the app is on iOS, Android, and Amazon.
Okay, cool. And so it's called the Spooky Studio app? That's what it's called?
Jim Harold's Spooky Studio.
Jim Harold's Spooky Studio. And so people can download the Libsyn app, and then within that, find your Spooky Studio, but they have to pay for that.
They have to pay for the Plus content. If somebody say, hey, I like Jim Harold's shows, I don't want to pay, but I just want to have one place for his free shows. All my free shows are there, okay?
Got it.
Now, if they decide they want to pay and unlock it, then they can get all the shows.
Got it.
And it's funny because there's like maybe 40, 50 with all my different shows, 40 or 50 free shows on that app if you don't pay. And if you open it up, it's like between 1,800 and 1,900 episodes.
Oh, wow. All right, so that's cool. So they can get the premium content if they subscribe and use the Libsyn app. And now the reason you're saying that those premium episodes are not technically a podcast is because you're storing those premium episodes on Libsyn's servers, media servers, and then it just gets delivered straight to the apps of the people who subscribe. So it's not really an RSS feed. Is that correct?
Yeah, it doesn't have an RSS feed. That's basically the difference. And the funny thing is that I was one of the first people to have a premium Plus club, I think, for podcasting, one of the early ones. I started it in 2011. And at that point, it was before I was using, Libsyn was a host, but I did my own website and did a premium plugin, a membership site plugin, and had private RSS feeds. And it was very complicated. And it was so complicated, it almost gave me an ulcer.
Oh.
Or it did give me an ulcer. What am I talking about?
Oh.
But the thing that happened is that I started to talk with Rob over at Libsyn, and he was telling me about their premium program. And I'm like, this is great. And it's been fantastic. They're great to work with.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Premium content. There's a lot of ways to do that now. A lot of people do that through Patreon, I guess, too, right? You can do that.
Yeah, it's funny because when Patreon started, they reached out to me, like when they started. And I said, well, I've already got a system in place. That's when I have my own membership site. So, yeah, that's another way to do it. And I know there's, what's the one called? That Glow is a new one that just came out. I don't know anything about it. I've just been reading in the newsletters like James Cridland's letter and things.
Right.
Glow is the name of that. And they're doing, and I think, that's for super fans. That's people who really want more. And that's going to be a low percentage of people. Right. But if you have a decent following for your free shows, there's going to be 2-3%, whatever it is, who say, hey, I want more content. And if you're willing to provide them the content and the way to get it, I think that's an overlooked way of making money in podcasting. I mean, I do quite a bit of advertising on my free shows. The Plus only shows are without ads, of course. But the thing is that I think to be an effective independent company doing podcasts, you have to look at multiple revenue streams, whether that be books, which I have, or whether that be premium, which I have, or whether that be advertising, or now I'm just starting to get into merch. I think you got to treat it like a company and diversify your revenue. But that's far beyond the idea of which mic I like.
Yeah, no, but that's great because you're making a living doing this. You have several shows, you're monetizing them properly. You have, the premium thing with Libsyn set up and all that. So a lot of people, this is very relevant to everyone listening. You know what I mean? Wherever they are in the podcast industry. So you have books, you have the premium episodes, you have merch. What else did you say? Advertising, yeah.
And let me say a note about advertising. I mean, some people think that advertising is a dirty word. I don't, because I happen to sell ads. But I do think, for me, advertising and podcasting, I prefer host-read. All of my endorsements are host-read. All of my sponsors are host-read. And also, I think you really focus on, at least for me, I would not publicize something I did not believe in. I'm not going to say what it was, but just this week I had somebody contact me and say, well, we have this service and we think you'd be a great show to promote it on. And they were actually right. It would be a great show, but it is not something I felt comfortable with. And I said, no, I've turned away thousands of dollars worth of ads. And I think if you not patting myself on the back too much, but if you have integrity in what you accept and what you promote, I hope and I think that comes through on the actual commercials. Hey, this is something I use, or this is something I would use if I were in need of this particular product or service. Right. I think that means a lot.
Yeah, it totally does. So, well, this has been great, Jim Harold. I'm so psyched for everything you've doing, all your success so far over the many, many years. You're one of the original podcasting pioneers in my book. And so it's been great talking with you, brother.
Well, it's been great talking with you, Chris. And no, it's been great talking with you. And Barry.
Yes.
My God, I'm starstruck. After the show, I got to get an autograph.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the.
Thank you, Chris.
I have the regular yeah, oh yeah, and I have the high pitched yeah, oh yeah. That's the high pitched one right there.
Excellent. Well,
Barry,
thank you, Chris. It's been a lot of fun.
Barry, you love Jim Harold, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Would you ever consider? Because I know Barry actually subscribes to the premium content through the app.
Thank you, Barry.
And Barry, would you ever consider canceling your subscription to Jim Harold?
No way.
Okay. So, all right. So at the end, we're not going to play music, and we're just gonna say "sound great." Remember this music? Oh, it sounds so nice, but we're not going to play it. All right. So Jim, you can either yell or just say it, whatever you want. And by the way, we never even got around to talking about the paranormal and ghosts and all that. But all right, we'll have to do this again. We'll do a premium episode.
There you go.
So, all right, we'll count down from 3 and we'll yell "sound great," everybody. And I want you listening in your car or listening while you're jogging. I don't care if you're jogging through Central Park. I want you to yell at the top of your lungs, "sound great." And I want everyone to turn and look at you like, what the hell's wrong with her? Okay? That's what I want. That would make me happy.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Sound great!
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah!
find out. Oh yeah, I